In the quiet college town of Las Cruces, New Mexico, 22-year-old Catherine J. Sepich was known to everyone as Katie. She was outspoken, driven, and impossible to ignore, a natural leader with a loud laugh and a sharp sense of humor. Friends described her as confident and fearless. Her family called her a ball of fire. From the moment she learned to walk, Katie moved through life at full speed. She grew up in Carlsbad, New Mexico, the oldest of 3 siblings. She was the kind of older sister who took charge, made plans, and pulled everyone along with her. To Katie, life was an adventure, and she liked to decide how that adventure would go. By 2003, Katie was a successful college student at New Mexico State University. She had already earned a business degree and was preparing to begin graduate school for her MBA. She worked as a waitress, was active in her sorority, and had a busy social life. She was also in a relationship. For 8 months, Katie had been dating her boyfriend Joe. But as summer came to an end, their relationship was under strain. Katie was about to start graduate school. Joe was planning to move hours away to work for his family. Neither of them knew what the future looked like anymore. Labor Day weekend arrived, and they decided to put their worries aside. On the night of August 30, 2003, Katie went out with Joe, her roommate Tracy, and a group of friends. They moved from bar to bar, drinking, dancing, laughing. Security footage from one of the bars later showed Katie and Joe holding hands. From the outside, everything looked fine. As the bars closed, the group continued the night at a nearby house party. Around 30 to 40 people crowded inside. Music played, alcohol flowed. The night stretched into early morning, but at the party, things changed. Katie saw Joe kissing another woman. An argument followed. Witnesses later described it as loud and emotional. A drunken fight between 2 people already on shaky ground. At around 3 a.m., Katie walked out of the house alone. She did not take her purse. She did not take her phone. She did not take her keys. She walked into the cold, dark night with nothing. Joe and a friend later got into Katie's car and drove around looking for her. They passed her house. Her bedroom light was off. They assumed she was home and asleep. They returned to the party. Joe fell asleep on a chair next to the same woman he had been seen kissing. Morning came. Katie did not. When people at the house party woke up, they noticed something unsettling. Katie's car was still parked outside. She lived only a few blocks away. If she had gone home, why was her car still there? Her roommate Tracy started to panic. Katie's phone was still in the house. Her purse and keys were there too. Everything she owned was either inside the house or inside her car. Katie had simply vanished. As Tracy searched for answers, Katie's mother Joanne woke up hundreds of miles away with a feeling she could not explain. She felt anxious from the moment she opened her eyes. That afternoon, her phone rang. 6 words shattered her world. "Have you talked to Katie today?" Police began searching immediately. When they arrived at Katie's house, they walked around the back of the property. There, they found their first disturbing clue. A window screen was damaged. One of Katie's sandals lay on the ground. The gravel below looked disturbed, as if someone had been dragged. It appeared Katie had made it home, but she never made it inside. At the same time, miles away, another discovery was unfolding. A couple hunting near an old dump site east of Las Cruces noticed something on the ground. From a distance, it looked wrong. As they approached, the truth became horrifying. A partially nude female body lay in the desert. Her back and shoulders were burned. Her legs were deliberately positioned and spread. Tire tracks nearby suggested a pickup truck had dumped her there. At 11 a.m., police arrived at the scene. Only hours later, the missing person case and the body would be connected. Tracy was asked to come to the station to identify someone related to Katie's disappearance. She assumed it was a formality. Maybe Katie had wandered into a hospital without ID. She had no idea what she was about to see. When the body bag was opened, Tracy collapsed. She later said Katie looked like she had died in agony. The autopsy confirmed the worst. Katie had been raped. She had been strangled. A liquid had been poured onto her body and set on fire. The fire burned out on its own. Under her fingernails was bloody DNA, evidence of a violent fight for her life. Katie's watch and rings were missing. Investigators believed she had been attacked near her home and transported after death. One detail haunted everyone who knew her. Katie had a naturally husky voice. She could not scream. Even as a child, when she tried, only air came out. She had tried to fight, she had tried to survive, but she could not cry for help. Her DNA was uploaded into CODIS. There were no matches. Investigators returned to the house party. They focused on the people closest to Katie: her roommate Tracy, her boyfriend Joe. Joe initially downplayed the argument. He did not mention kissing another woman. He told detectives he wanted to marry Katie one day. He said they had talked about their future, but inconsistencies began to appear. Joe admitted he had fought with Katie. He admitted kissing another woman. He admitted driving around looking for her. Yet out of nearly 40 partygoers, Joe was the only person who refused to provide a DNA sample. Witnesses also said something disturbing. Joe had been calling Katie's phone that morning, but her phone was inside the house. Some believe Joe had possession of it while calling. Within days, Joe left town and returned to his family's home hundreds of miles away. His parents hired an attorney. He declined further interviews. Investigators were stuck. Without probable cause, they could not force cooperation. Time passed. Leads dried up. Joe was eventually cleared when his DNA was recovered from Katie's bedroom, explaining its presence. He later provided a sample voluntarily, but by then, precious time had been lost. Detectives moved on. 2 years passed with no answers. Then they looked backward. 9 weeks after Katie's murder, a man broke into the apartment of 2 female NMSU students, armed with a knife. The women locked themselves in a bathroom and made a desperate 911 call. Police arrived just in time. The suspect was 23-year-old Gabriel Avila. Shockingly, a judge released him on bail. Gabriel fled to Mexico. When he was finally arrested years later, he was required to submit DNA. That DNA matched Katie Sepich. Gabriel Avila was a stranger to Katie. They had never met before that night. He was not part of her social circle. He did not attend the party. He was not someone she trusted. He later confessed. In the early morning hours, Gabriel Avila was driving through Las Cruces after leaving a drug dealer's house. He was under the influence of cocaine. As he drove, he nearly struck a young woman walking alone along the road. That woman was Katie Sepich. Avila pulled over and offered her a ride. She refused. She was only a few blocks from home and believed she was safe. She told him she was fine. Avila drove away. Minutes later, he passed her again. This time, he saw her outside her house, trying to climb through a window. She did not have her keys. Her purse and phone were gone. She was vulnerable, distracted, and alone in the dark. Avila stopped. What happened next would end Katie's life. He attacked her outside her home. He raped her. He strangled her. He continued until she stopped fighting. After killing her, Avila placed her body into his truck. He drove her out into the desert to a remote dump site east of Las Cruces. There, he attempted to destroy evidence by pouring a liquid onto her body and setting her on fire. The fire burned out on its own. He left her there. For years, Katie's murder remained unsolved. It was only after Avila was arrested for another violent crime and forced to submit a DNA sample that investigators finally received the match they had been waiting for. The DNA under Katie's fingernails identified her killer. In 2007, Gabriel Avila pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, rape, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to 69 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole decades into the future. For Katie's family, the conviction brought justice, but it did not bring peace. They were left with a question that would change the course of criminal law in the United States. Why was Gabriel Avila free to attack again? Just 9 weeks after Katie's murder, Avila had broken into the apartment of 2 female New Mexico State University students while armed with a knife. The women hid in a bathroom and made a frantic 911 call. Police arrived just in time. Avila was arrested, but he was released on bail. At the time, New Mexico law did not allow DNA to be collected upon arrest. DNA was only taken after conviction. Because of that, Avila's DNA was never entered into the system following the burglary. If it had been, Katie's murder could have been solved almost immediately. Katie's parents understood one painful truth: their daughter could not be saved, but others still could be. They began advocating for a change in the law, pushing for legislation that would require DNA collection from individuals arrested for serious crimes. Their goal was not vengeance, it was prevention. Their efforts resulted in what became known as Katie's Law. The law allows DNA to be collected at the time of felony arrest, not just after conviction. It gives investigators the ability to identify violent offenders sooner, solve cold cases faster, and exonerate innocent people before years are lost. New Mexico passed Katie's Law in 2006. Other states followed. Eventually, the law expanded nationwide. Since its implementation, Katie's Law and similar statutes have helped reopen hundreds of cold cases, identify repeat offenders, and prevent future attacks. Victims who might never have seen justice finally received answers. Katie's life was taken in a random act of violence, but her name became part of a system that now saves lives. Her family says they no longer ask what if. They do not relive the moments they cannot change. Instead, they focus on what is, a legacy built from loss, a law born from tragedy, a young woman whose name continues to protect strangers she never had the chance to meet. Katie Sepich is not just remembered, she is still making a difference.